The Utah Jazz have been a staple of the NBA since the 1970s. There have been many times the franchise has almost climbed the mountaintop, but came up short. They are the third oldest organization to not have an NBA title to their name. The franchise has always found success with a guard-big duo. Entering the 2020s, the Jazz seem to have had the team that could bring a trophy to Utah. Yet, halfway through the decade, they have been a bottom feeder of the league and look to continue to be moving forward. As you may know, Rudy Gobert was the first player to test positive for COVID, shutting down the league on March 11th, 2020. The OKC Thunder were supposed to host the Jazz on that day. It was a scary time in the world, and no one knew what this pandemic would become at the time. I bring this up because the version of the Jazz we saw on that night and in the bubble and the next year is a very, very different team than what we see today. Gobert was 27, Spida was 23. So, what happened to the Utah Jazz to cause this collapse? The 2020 offseason was an offseason of retooling and small improvements. They extended D-Mitch to a 5-year, $163 million deal. They re-signed Jordan Clarkson, signed Derek Favors, Elijah Hughes, Trent Forrest, and Jarrell Brandt. In the draft, they selected Udoka Azubuike with the 27th pick and Saban Lee with the 38th pick, who they eventually traded. The Utah Jazz entered the 2020-21 season looking to be a solid playoff team. They're plus 225 to win their division, second place, as well as plus 2,500 to have the best record in the league, 11th best odds. These both came true. They finished with a league best 52-20 in the shortened season, led behind Donovan Mitchell's 26 points a night, 6th man of the year Jordan Clarkson, and DPOY Rudy Gobert. After dropping game 1 of the playoffs to the 8th-seeded Grizzlies, the Jazz went on to dominate the series in a gentleman's sweep. Mitchell averaged 28.5 a contest, and the Jazz looked strong. In round 2, however, the Jazz jumped out to a 2-game lead before dropping 4 straight to the Clippers, losing to LA in 6 games. Mitchell stepped it up even more, averaging 35 points a night. This is the best it ever got for Utah. They may not have known it at the time, but the collapse had begun. After the season, President of Basketball Operations Dennis Lindsey steps down. He had been at the helm for 9 years. He was replaced in his role by Justin Zanuck, who holds the role to this day. Now, I would not say this man is responsible for how the next 4 years played out, instead a victim of the circumstances he inherited. There's already drama brewing between Lindsey and team head coach Quinn Snyder. There were differences in opinion when it came to team development and rotations, and it got to the point where the head coach and team GM wouldn't talk to one another. Also, Danny Ainge was named CEO and alternate governor for the Jazz, where he has no say over basketball operations, working with Zanuck, but it muddies up the structure of the franchise, as many think he's the one calling the shots, including Basketball Reference. So there was clear tension in the organization, and while I don't think anyone expected the collapse that ensued, there was a clear shift heading into the 2021 offseason. In the 2021 draft, the Jazz drafted Santi Aldama, eventually swapping him for Jared Butler, and 2 future picks. That trade is aged okay. Mike Conley signed an extension, Eric Pascal was traded to Utah for one of those aforementioned second-round picks, and the Jazz picked up Hassan Whiteside in free agency to back up Gobert. And finally, what was seen as the big get was signing Rudy Gay to a 2-year, $12 million deal to come in and be a versatile vet, the type of pickup that usually puts a team over the edge. It did not do such a thing. The 2021-22 season was a step back. At the trade deadline, they sat at 34-21 and made a move to hopefully give them a boost. As in a 3-team trade, they flipped Joe Ingles, Elijah Hughes, and 2 seconds for Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Juan Hernangomez. The move didn't change much, as the Jazz would finish the season as a middle-of-the-pack 5 seed with a 49-33 record. The club did command the highest offensive rating in the league at 116.7, led by Donovan Mitchell's 25.9 points per game, and 5 total Jazz over 10 points a night. The Jazz, however, were eliminated from the playoffs in round 1, losing in 6 to the Jalen Brunson-Luka Mavericks. While the box scores and stats make this look like a good series, the Mavs were without Luka for the first 3 games of the series, and the Jazz didn't capitalize on this opportunity, finding themselves down 1-2 before Luka even made his return. This was the last flicker of a playoff caliber Utah Jazz team that we have seen. There were signs the end was nearing for this core, as Donovan Mitchell was unhappy. During the playoffs, he had a very public falling out with the training staff with how they dealt with his late season ankle injury. Concerns of Mitchell's future with the franchise began to circulate. The collapse officially began on June 5th, 2022, with head coach Quinn Snyder stepping down by his own power. By the end of the month, Will Hardy, a first-time head coach, was hired. Immediately, rumors of a rebuild ran wild. About a month after Snyder's resignation, it began, with the first domino being Rudy Gobert. with him being sent to Minnesota for Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Leandro Balmero, Jared Vanderbilt, Walker Kessler, and 5 first-round picks. On August 25th, Pat Bev was later flipped to LA for Talon Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson, which was seen as the last chance for both players at the time. A few days later, the next, arguably more important domino fell in Donovan Mitchell. He was shipped to Cleveland for Ochai Agbaji, Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, 3 first-round picks, and 2 first-round pick swaps. To blow up their dynamic duo, the Jazz had a return of 8 players and 8 first-rounders, as well as 2 first-round pick swaps. While it is surely a hard pill to swallow for fans at the time, it is clear that those hauls were too good to pass up, especially if there were concerns of poor chemistry. This is where Danny Ainge comes into play again. After the trades, Ainge began telling media members that the duo no longer believed in each other. Mitchell denies those claims by his former employer. In a last-minute trade, the Jazz swapped Saban Lee and Kelly Olynyk with Bojan Bogdanovic of the Pistons. A couple minor signings, a rebrand, and who really cares? This team is going to suck. The problem is, they didn't suck enough. They actually started the season hot, holding the 1 seed multiple times at records of 10-3 and 12-6. They only lasted there for a few days both times, and by mid-December they were down to the 8 seed, but they weren't the tank show everyone assumed they would be. On the day of the trade deadline though, they were down to sub 500 and the 11th seed. The Jazz continued their teardown of their roster at the deadline, trading away Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Mike Conley to the Wolves in a 3-team deal that landed them a first-round pick from the Lakers, as well as Russell Westbrook, Juan Toscano-Anderson, and Damian Jones. Russ was eventually waived and signed to the Clippers, so there was little to no return for their former starting point guard and a young wing. Rookie head coach Will Hardy led this interesting collection of players to a 37-45 record, significantly beating preseason odds that had them at 23.5 wins. Utah finished as the 12th seed and only 3 games out of the play-in. Quick side note, I honestly think that Will Hardy is a very talented coach because of what he accomplished in the season and really all of his tenure in Utah. There's a reason that, as we'll get to later, they extended him with an 85-161 career record. He knows what he's doing and clearly can develop talent. The problem is that the roster has been just really weird for the last couple years now, again, as we will see. I honestly think they wanted to get a first-time coach to limit expectations and kind of have a built-in scapegoat, and accidentally found a very good coach that should survive. Now, I don't know if he'll survive in Utah long-term, but if he gets fired, I think he will find success in the NBA somewhere. The 2023 NBA draft featured the Utah Jazz having 3 first-round picks, where they took Taylor Hendricks at 9, Keontae George at 16, and Bryce Sensabaugh at 28. Looking at the bigs taken after Hendricks, maybe they should have gone and taken Derek Lively, but he is more of a pure big. Hami Jaquez, Brandon Podziemski, and Cam Whitmore were 3 of the 4 next picks after Keontae George. I think there's an argument to take any of those guys, but looking back, George has worked out well and is a pretty good steal overall. Bryce has also been a very good steal for sure. Overall though, very okay draft. And that was kind of the theme of the whole offseason. The Jazz signed Josh Christopher and Omar Yurtseven in free agency and lost Juan Toscano-Anderson and Udoka Azubuike in free agency. Very much signings of all time, nothing that's going to make them better. An extension to Jordan Clarkson, cool, doesn't fit the timeline, but whatever. And the big swing, sending Rudy Gay and a second to Atlanta for John Collins. A player who plays the exact same position as your number 9 pick, a position you already have a lot of with Lauri Markkanen as well. Cool, that makes total sense to do. This is where the cycle of the infinite rebuild really starts. This is a team that has a lot of young talent, yet has Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and Jordan Clarkson playing heavy minutes. You will see the pattern of having a couple above average vets playing heavy minutes, many of whom play the same position, followed by small moves in the offseason. Hardy likely plays these vets to give them any sort of chance of competing because he does do a good job of playing his bench, with 13 guys appearing in over half the games. But is a system that clearly will keep this team as a bottom feeder if they continue down this path. Keontae George was the only rookie to catch on with the main roster, playing 75 games and starting 44, averaging 13 and 4. The other 2 were pulled up and down between the G League so much. I think I counted 24 call-ups or send-downs for each of them before the trade deadline. And at the trade deadline, the Jazz shipped Ochai Agbaji and Kelly Olynyk to Toronto for Kira Lewis and Otto Porter. They also shipped Simone Fontecchio to Detroit for nothing since they waived Kevin Knox. Otto Porter was also eventually waived, meaning they basically gave up 3 players for 1, Not necessarily a bad thing, but something to note. A 31-51 record was slightly under preseason expectations, but it's probably seen as a move in the right direction. Most front offices would see a team with vets taking up valuable playing time that isn't contending nor truly a bottom feeder and move on from said vets, but not the Utah Jazz. In the 2024 draft, the Jazz took Cody Williams with pick number 10, Isaiah Collier with pick 29, and Kyle Filipkowski with pick number 32. 1 year out, we'll see what this draft becomes, but at least they didn't load up on just one position. The Jazz did nothing in this offseason. Like, there were moves made and stuff, but not the moves necessary, just very little ones. Expectations for 2024-25 could not be any lower than they were. The team ultimately went 17-65 this year, worst in the West, landing them the number 5 pick after following the lottery, meaning they lost their chance to get Cooper Flagg. Also during the season, the Jazz found themselves as an add-on in both the Luka trade and the Butler trade, adding assets. This season saw Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and Jordan Clarkson all miss significant time. This opened up so much opportunity for their young guys. While they sucked, their young core got real NBA reps in relatively stress-free games. They found out a lot about these guys and found some diamonds in the rough for sure. Now, this offseason is where they maybe have found a way out of this loop. With the number 5 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz took Ace Bailey, a 6'10 stud who looks like he could be the face of the franchise moving forward. There's been some drama that has been very documented, so I won't get into it here, but it looks like it's all cleared up. They also added Walter Clayton Jr. at 18 via a trade with Washington. They drafted Jameer Watkins with number 43, and finally they added John Tonye at number 53. I personally gave the Utah Jazz a C+ on this offseason as they moved on from John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, and more. There wasn't a large return, at least one that makes sense in their timeline, which is why I gave them that C+. But these guys could just be vets. If the Jazz commit to going young, they could find their way out of this infinite rebuild. But that requires the front office to break the loop. It appears they have tried, but they potentially have just changed out the names of the vets. The big question moving forward is, have the Jazz bottomed out? If so, how many years of development do they need? When will we see the Utah Jazz contending again? These are all questions they will look to answer heading into the 2025-26 season. What are your thoughts? Are the Utah Jazz finally going to break out of this rebuild? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching. I'm out. Peace.